The first sign will not be empty shelves or sirens in the streets. It will be silence in the pipes. You will turn the handle expecting pressure, expecting that familiar rush, and instead there will be a cough of air followed by nothing. In that moment, the illusion of permanence collapses. Modern civilization survives on an assumption so deeply embedded that most people never question it. Water will always flow. Yet the entire structure of urban life depends on electrically powered pumps, chemical treatment systems, pressurized distribution networks, and a fragile chain of maintenance operations that must function continuously. When any link breaks under stress, water does not gradually decline in convenience. It disappears as a life-sustaining force. This is not speculation. It is engineering reality. The danger of a water crisis during a systemic failure is not thirst on the first day. It is the cascading biological and infrastructural breakdown that follows within 72 hours. Analysis of human physiology shows that the body begins to experience measurable cognitive decline with as little as 2% dehydration. Blood volume decreases, heart rate increases, and decision-making deteriorates. In high-stress conditions, fluid loss accelerates through perspiration and respiration. Misunderstanding begins with the belief that dehydration is a distant threat measured in days. In reality, impaired cognition begins quietly and early, precisely when strategic decisions must be made. The hidden science lies in homeostasis. The body maintains fluid balance through precise electrolyte regulation, and when intake drops even slightly below output, that balance destabilizes. Evidence from emergency medicine consistently demonstrates that mild dehydration increases risk of accidents, poor judgment, and physical fatigue. The survival implication is immediate. Water planning is not about comfort. It is about preserving cognitive function before visible crisis symptoms appear. But the crisis does not originate in the human body. It begins in infrastructure. Municipal water systems rely on a sequence of processes: source extraction, treatment, pressurization, and distribution. Surface water from rivers and reservoirs is pumped to treatment plants where coagulation, sedimentation, filtration, and disinfection occur. Each stage requires mechanical equipment and chemical dosing calibrated to specific flow rates. Misunderstanding occurs when people assume gravity alone supplies their tap. While some cities use gravity-fed systems from elevated reservoirs, most modern urban areas depend heavily on electrically powered pumps to maintain consistent pressure across vast horizontal and vertical distances. The hidden science is hydraulic head and pressure maintenance. Without continuous pumping, water towers and storage tanks deplete rapidly as consumers draw from them. Evidence from past prolonged outages reveals that upper floors in high-rise buildings lose water first because booster pumps cease operation, followed by entire neighborhoods as system pressure collapses. The survival implication is stark. When the grid fails or fuel supplies for generators are interrupted, municipal water becomes a finite resource measured in hours, not weeks. The misunderstanding that the government will truck in water overlooks logistical mathematics. Delivering potable water to a city of 1 million people at even the minimal survival threshold of 1 gallon per person per day requires 1 million gallons daily. A standard water tanker truck carries roughly 8,000 gallons. That translates to over 125 fully loaded trucks every single day, assuming perfect road conditions and unlimited fuel. The hidden science is supply chain throughput capacity. During widespread emergencies, fuel scarcity, road congestion, and personnel shortages reduce transport efficiency dramatically. Evidence from disaster relief operations demonstrates that emergency water distribution points often provide only limited quantities per household and are vulnerable to long lines and crowd management challenges. The survival implication is clear. Reliance on external resupply during a large-scale SHTF scenario is mathematically unstable. Personal storage and purification capability must exist before distribution systems falter. Water contamination represents a parallel danger even when flow continues. Analysis of treatment plant vulnerability shows that chemical dosing systems require precise calibration. If operators cannot maintain chlorine residual levels due to supply interruptions or equipment failure, microbial contamination risk increases. Misunderstanding assumes that clear water is safe water. The hidden science is microbiology. Pathogens such as E. coli, Giardia, and Cryptosporidium are invisible and odorless at infectious doses. Without adequate disinfection, they propagate quickly in distribution systems, particularly if pressure drops and allows backflow through compromised joints. Evidence from boil water advisories across multiple municipalities demonstrates that contamination events can occur even in developed infrastructure when pressure fluctuations allow intrusion. The survival implication is not paranoia but verification. During instability, assume untreated tap water may require boiling or chemical disinfection before consumption. Chemical contamination introduces a different threat profile. Industrial zones often store hazardous materials in proximity to waterways. During floods, earthquakes, or civil disruption, containment systems may fail. Misunderstanding focuses exclusively on bacteria while ignoring dissolved toxins. The hidden science is that boiling water does not remove heavy metals, petroleum products, or many industrial solvents. In some cases, boiling concentrates them through evaporation. Evidence from environmental health studies confirms that activated carbon filtration can reduce certain organic contaminants, but is ineffective against many heavy metals without specialized media. The survival implication demands layered purification strategies, mechanical filtration for particulates, chemical disinfection for microbes, and carbon-based filtration for organic chemicals when available. Household plumbing contains overlooked reservoirs of water that become critical during early-stage crisis. Water heaters often store 30 to 80 gallons of potable water, provided contamination has not occurred. Toilet tanks, excluding bowls treated with chemicals, contain several additional gallons. Misunderstanding leads many to overlook these sources until too late. The hidden science involves simple physics. Once municipal pressure drops, stored water in household systems becomes isolated. Evidence from emergency preparedness guidance consistently identifies water heaters as primary emergency reserves. The survival implication is timing. Access these reserves before sediment disturbance or contamination occurs. The escalation from water scarcity to sanitation collapse happens rapidly. Modern sewer systems depend on gravity for much of their flow, but lift stations are required in flat terrain. These stations rely on electricity. When they fail, sewage can back up into streets and basements. Misunderstanding views sanitation as separate from drinking water, yet the two are biologically intertwined. The hidden science is pathogen transmission pathways. When waste is not contained, flies, rodents, and surface runoff become vectors. Evidence from public health emergencies demonstrates that diarrheal disease spreads fastest where sanitation infrastructure fails concurrently with water shortages. The survival implication is disciplined waste management, designating sealed containers, using improvised latrines away from water sources, and practicing strict hand hygiene even when water is scarce. Rainwater harvesting appears to offer a simple solution, yet even this requires analysis. The danger lies in assuming rooftop runoff is immediately potable. Roofing materials may leach chemicals, and accumulated bird droppings introduce pathogens. Misunderstanding equates rainfall with purity. The hidden science reveals that first flush diversion systems significantly reduce contamination by discarding initial runoff that carries debris. Evidence from sustainable water management research shows that properly filtered and disinfected rainwater can be safe, but untreated collection poses risk. The survival implication is preparation. Install or pre-stage filtration and diversion systems before crisis, not during. Groundwater through private wells offers resilience in some regions, but most wells rely on electric pumps. Without power, water remains inaccessible below ground. Misunderstanding romanticizes wells as manual backups. The hidden science is mechanical lift. Deep wells require substantial energy to draw water upward. Evidence from rural outage scenarios confirms that households without manual pump attachments cannot access groundwater during power failure. The survival implication is evaluating whether manual pump retrofits are feasible and maintaining alternative lifting methods. As stored water depletes, rationing becomes psychological warfare against instinct. The danger is overconsumption in early stages driven by stress. Analysis of behavioral response under scarcity reveals that uncertainty triggers hoarding and impulsive use. Misunderstanding treats rationing as simple division of supply by days. The hidden science is variable need based on temperature, activity, and health status. Evidence from humanitarian guidelines suggests minimum survival water requirements between 2 and 4 liters per person per day, depending on conditions. The survival implication is adaptive rationing, informed by environmental factors, rather than fixed arbitrary numbers. Escalation occurs when water scarcity intersects with energy scarcity. Boiling water requires fuel, whether gas, propane, wood, or electricity. In dense urban settings, open flames introduce fire hazards. Misunderstanding underestimates urban fire spread potential during service interruptions. The hidden science is heat transfer between closely spaced structures. Once firefighting capacity is reduced due to low water pressure, small fires escalate rapidly. Evidence from blackout case studies shows increased fire risk due to alternative heating and cooking methods. The survival implication is cautious fuel use and prioritizing chemical disinfection methods when appropriate to conserve fuel and reduce ignition risk. Electrolyte imbalance represents a less visible threat during prolonged water crises. Drinking excessive untreated water without electrolyte replacement can lead to hyponatremia, especially if combined with heavy sweating. Misunderstanding assumes more water always equals better hydration. The hidden science explains sodium's role in nerve conduction and muscle contraction. Evidence from endurance sports medicine shows that overhydration without salt replacement can cause confusion and seizures. The survival implication is maintaining balanced intake, when possible through oral rehydration solutions or salted foods. As crisis extends toward what feels like day zero, the point at which normalcy clearly will not return quickly, community dynamics intensify. The danger shifts from individual scarcity to collective desperation at shared water points. Analysis of crowd behavior indicates that scarcity combined with visible supply triggers tension. Misunderstanding attributes conflict to moral failure rather than structural stress. The hidden science of resource competition demonstrates that transparent distribution systems reduce violence risk. Evidence from humanitarian operations shows that orderly queuing and clear ration limits stabilized behavior. The survival implication is avoiding peak collection times and maintaining low profile during procurement. Ultimately, the truth about a SHTF water crisis is not dramatic contamination or cinematic drought. It is systemic fragility hidden behind daily convenience. Every glass of tap water depends on continuous energy input, chemical supply chains, and human oversight. When those falter, the margin between stability and collapse narrows quickly. The transition now moves from immediate response to long-term adaptation. Methods of small-scale purification, methods of preserving water quality over weeks, and strategies for relocating toward sustainable sources if urban systems remain compromised. Water is not merely a resource. It is the limiting factor that defines the boundary between resilience and failure. When the crisis extends beyond the initial shock and stored reserves begin to thin, the danger evolves from interruption to systemic dehydration at scale. At this stage, Water scarcity stops being an individual inconvenience and becomes a population-level stress multiplier. Analysis of humanitarian disaster data shows that once daily per-person water availability drops below critical thresholds, disease rates, conflict frequency, and mortality begin to rise in measurable patterns. Misunderstanding often assumes that thirst alone is the defining risk, but dehydration is only the first physiological signal. The hidden science lies in how reduced water availability degrades sanitation, food preparation, wound care, and temperature regulation simultaneously. Evidence from refugee camp studies and prolonged infrastructure failures demonstrates that when water access falls below minimum survival standards, secondary effects, particularly diarrheal illness, become the dominant cause of decline. The survival implication is sobering. Securing water is not about satisfying thirst. It is about preventing cascading biological collapse. Stored water itself introduces a hidden hazard if not managed correctly. The danger emerges from stagnation and microbial regrowth within containers. Analysis of microbiology reveals that even treated municipal water contains low levels of microorganisms kept in check by residual disinfectants such as chlorine. Over time, especially in warm conditions and exposed to light, disinfectant levels dissipate. Misunderstanding assumes that once water is clean, it remains clean indefinitely. The hidden science shows that biofilms can form on container walls, providing habitat for bacterial regrowth. Evidence from water storage research indicates that opaque, food-grade containers stored in cool environments significantly slow microbial proliferation, while clear containers exposed to sunlight encourage algal growth. The survival implication is disciplined rotation of stored water, use of sealed containers, and periodic retreatment with appropriate disinfectants when long storage is anticipated. Chemical disinfection requires precision. The danger is improper dosing, either insufficient to neutralize pathogens or excessive to the point of toxicity. Analysis of chlorine chemistry shows that effective disinfection depends on concentration, contact time, temperature, and pH. Misunderstanding leads many to estimate doses without measurement. The hidden science is that too little chlorine fails to kill pathogens, while too much produces harmful byproducts and gastrointestinal irritation. Evidence from public health guidelines provides specific ratios for household bleach with known sodium hypochlorite concentration, yet many commercial products vary in strength. The survival implication is pre-crisis education. Knowing exact concentrations and maintaining simple measuring tools ensures that treatment is effective and safe under stress conditions. Filtration systems offer mechanical removal of particulates and some pathogens, but each technology has limits. The danger lies in overconfidence in a single device. Analysis of filter pore sizes shows that microfilters can remove bacteria and protozoa, but may not eliminate viruses, which are significantly smaller. Misunderstanding equates any filter with comprehensive purification. The hidden science involves membrane integrity. Filters can crack or degrade, allowing bypass without visible sign. Evidence from field testing demonstrates that combining filtration with chemical disinfection significantly increases reliability. The survival implication is redundancy. Layering purification methods reduces dependence on a single point of failure. As surface water sources become more heavily used during crisis, contamination risk escalates from human activity itself. The danger increases when individuals wash clothing, bathe, and collect drinking water from the same limited sources. Analysis of pathogen transmission pathways reveals how quickly fecal contamination spreads in shared environments. Misunderstanding assumes flowing water self-purifies instantly. The hidden science clarifies that dilution reduces concentration, but does not eliminate risk near contamination points. Evidence from cholera outbreaks shows how shared water access without sanitation controls leads to explosive transmission. The survival implication is strict separation of activities. Designate upstream collection for drinking water and downstream zones for washing whenever geography allows. Urban runoff introduces additional chemical hazards after infrastructure failure. The danger is subtle because contaminants are often invisible and odorless. Analysis of stormwater systems shows that heavy metals from brake dust, petroleum residues, and industrial chemicals accumulate on surfaces and are washed into drains during rain events. Misunderstanding assumes rainfall refreshes waterways. The hidden science indicates that first flush runoff during storms often carries the highest contaminant load. Evidence from environmental monitoring consistently identifies elevated toxin levels in urban waterways following precipitation. The survival implication is delaying collection immediately after heavy rain and prioritizing sources less exposed to paved runoff. The human body under prolonged water stress undergoes metabolic adaptation, but at cost. The danger intensifies as kidney function becomes strained by reduced fluid intake. Analysis of renal physiology shows that concentrated urine increases risk of kidney stones and urinary tract infections. Misunderstanding interprets reduced urination as normal during rationing. The hidden science reveals that dark urine and infrequent output signal dehydration and rising toxin concentration in the bloodstream. Evidence from clinical research indicates that sustained low fluid intake elevates risk of acute kidney injury, particularly in hot conditions. The survival implication is maintaining minimum hydration thresholds, even if it requires reducing physical activity to conserve water. Food preparation becomes constrained by water scarcity. The danger arises when dry staples such as rice or beans require significant water for cooking. Analysis of caloric efficiency shows that certain foods provide high energy relative to required water input, while others demand large volumes for rehydration. Misunderstanding leads to selection of foods based solely on shelf life rather than preparation cost. The hidden science involves water budgeting. Every cup used for cooking reduces drinking reserves unless the cooking water is consumed as broth. Evidence from survival nutrition planning emphasizes prioritizing foods that require minimal preparation water. The survival implication is adapting diet toward low-water preparation items during crisis. Psychological stress intensifies around visible depletion. The danger is erosion of trust within households as supplies dwindle. Analysis of group dynamics under scarcity indicates that transparency about remaining resources reduces conflict. Misunderstanding assumes withholding information prevents panic. The hidden science shows that uncertainty breeds suspicion and hoarding behavior. Evidence from confined environment studies demonstrates that shared planning stabilizes morale. The survival implication is collective awareness and joint decision-making about ration levels. As crisis extends into a second week without reliable restoration, relocation pressure increases. The danger lies in moving without confirmed access to sustainable water sources. Analysis of migration during drought conditions reveals that displacement without destination planning leads to higher mortality. Misunderstanding romanticizes relocation toward rivers or lakes without evaluating seasonal variability and contamination risk. The hidden science includes hydrological cycles. Some streams are intermittent and may run dry during specific months. Evidence from water resource management studies shows that surface availability fluctuates dramatically based on rainfall and upstream use. The survival implication is reconnaissance and verification before committing to movement. Heat-related mortality risk rises sharply during water crises in warm climates. The danger is compounded dehydration combined with high ambient temperature. Analysis of thermoregulation demonstrates that sweating is the primary cooling mechanism, dependent on adequate fluid intake. Misunderstanding interprets reduced sweating as adaptation. The hidden science clarifies that diminished sweat response may signal severe dehydration and impending heat stroke. Evidence from epidemiological data shows that heat waves during water shortages dramatically increase mortality among vulnerable populations. The survival implication is reducing exertion during peak heat, seeking shade, and prioritizing hydration over non-essential activities. Conversely, cold environments present their own water paradox. Snow and ice appear abundant, yet melting them requires fuel and yields less liquid volume than expected. The danger is underestimating energy cost of snow conversion. Analysis shows that snow is mostly air. A large volume melts into relatively small water yield. Misunderstanding assumes snow can be consumed directly. The hidden science reveals that eating snow lowers core body temperature and increases hypothermia risk. Evidence from cold weather survival research consistently advises melting snow before consumption and warming it when possible. The survival implication is fuel planning proportional to water needs in cold climates. As communal sources strain, informal water markets may emerge. The danger is purchasing untreated or improperly stored water from unreliable vendors. Analysis of economic behavior under scarcity shows that opportunistic reselling can compromise safety standards. Misunderstanding equates price with quality. The hidden science is that without laboratory testing, contamination cannot be detected visually. Evidence from disaster zones indicates that secondary water distribution sometimes bypasses treatment safeguards. The survival implication is applying purification measures even to purchased water during crisis. Infrastructure restoration, when it begins, may not immediately guarantee safety. The danger is assuming that resumed flow equals restored quality. Analysis of system restart procedures shows that pressure surges can dislodge sediment and biofilms within pipes. Misunderstanding encourages immediate consumption upon flow return. The hidden science explains that flushing taps for several minutes reduces contaminant concentration. Evidence from municipal advisories often instruct residents to run water until clear before use. The survival implication is cautious reintegration into municipal supply and continued purification until official safety confirmation. The water crisis is not defined by a dramatic day zero announcement. It is defined by thresholds crossed quietly: declining pressure, failing sanitation, increasing illness. Each stage compounds the next. The truth rarely emphasized is that water resilience depends less on massive storage and more on knowledge of purification chemistry, hydrology, physiology, and disciplined rationing. The transition now moves into long-term sustainment strategies, constructing improvised slow-son filters, managing graywater reuse safely, and developing micro-collection systems that extend viability beyond emergency days into weeks. Survival under water crisis is not heroic, it is methodical, and methodical action must begin before day zero arrives.